And in this discussion, and we've obviously talked about this before we've had this conversation, so we as a three, and you two specifically, we understand this. When you are out talking to leaders in your respective roles, is the challenge that there is a lack of awareness about what you are talking about? Or is the challenge that the awareness is there, but it's just so hard to step into this deep network of minds thinking about the forces at play? What's going on right now, do you think?
Well, I mean, if I'm going to pick up on that point, I think both is the answer. I think there is a change of awareness. COVID's been massive because it has, for obvious reasons, it's made people rethink where we are, where we're going, what the purpose of business is, who the business is for, who it serves, how it fits into the wider social purpose, the wider social good. So those are all, it's been a great opportunity to rethink some of those questions. But I think, there is a fundamental problem, which is, as people, we're not predisposed to talking about these things. So I think at the most sort of fundamental level, you look at organizational life, and emotion is a taboo. Emotion is perceived as, still, I think, is perceived as weakness, or it's something that other people do, but it's not something that I do. And of course, there are acceptable forms of emotion, whether it's sort of, an expression of frustration or anger or whatever, because that's seen as a form of strength, depending on the culture of the organization. But anything much beyond that is quite challenging. And why that's complicated is because work, and when you think about it, when you really drill down into the detail of it, it makes absolutely no sense without emotion. So the kind of the mental litmus test that I use is if you had a child and that child died, it would be horrific. And if you're in conversation with a kind of an avatar of hyperlogical thinking, somebody like Dr. Spock, their rational response to that would be, well, never mind, you have another child, or at least you're young enough to raise another child. And of course, that doesn't work for obvious reasons. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It doesn't bear any relation to real life. So the point being, life and work are only meaningful because of emotion. So, we acknowledge that they're absolutely part of the fabric of how we operate as individuals, as teams, as organizations. And we acknowledge, somewhat begrudgingly, I think, that a lot of really powerful choices are made at an emotional level. But we're not good at addressing it directly. We're not good at preparing space where we can engage with it productively, bring it into conscious conversation and work with it. We invest a lot of energy in trying to avoid it, work around it, and pretend that it's not there. Mm-hmm. So that's counterproductive. It's hugely counterproductive. It's counterproductive and it's anti-creative, I would argue, mm-hmm. because it's also in that realm. It's not just where the obstacles arise, but it's also where the opportunities arise. And to me, opportunity is absolutely the wellspring of creativity.
Mm-hmm. And I think as the World Economic Forum said, that creativity is the single most important skill required in business these days. So businesses that aren't creating the conditions to foster creativity across the board, not just creative communications, although that's clearly very important, but creativity full stop, product development, etc., are going to struggle. We talked about sustainable businesses, didn't we? And increasingly they are going to need to be perpetually creative as they respond to rapidly changing environments. I think the interesting word that you used in there, Tom, was culture, which quite possibly sits over the top of much of this conversation, really, the prevailing cultures that businesses either foster and develop or allow to happen. And an observation, Janine, to your question about conversations that we've been having with businesses from global organisations that we're working with to startups, whether we as a business are intimately involved in the development of their culture, in the work that we're doing with the brand, there is now a very, very clear recognition that effort needs to be put into that space for all the reasons we've said. And that requires leadership to have, perhaps to borrow from Carol Dweck, that kind of growth mindset and that openness that Tom mentioned. And from some large law firms to some international businesses, etc., we have definitely found a willingness to engage around that conversation now and see that intimately tied to their brand. What I struggled with for many, many years was this really poor concept of what a brand was, as articulated by too many businesses, which was, have you got our brand right on the advertising, i.e. had we put the logo in the correct position, which I always found just really quite sad. Now I think there is a really strong feeling that brand covers your behaviour so much more than just your communications, your outward appearance. And consequently, that's why I think, purpose, people and culture are the components, the three lead components for fostering a creative culture in a business.